The first time Zora Imani Washington saw her husband, he was lying in a silk-lined coffin. His face was beautiful, devastatingly so, with sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw, and lips that looked like they had never smiled. White lilies surrounded him, and the scent of expensive cologne mixed with funeral incense filled the air of the massive estate. She was 23 years old, wearing a wedding dress that didn't fit, standing in front of a dead man she had never met, being forced to say vows to a corpse. "With this ring I thee wed," she whispered, her voice breaking. But here's the thing nobody told her. Kang Seo-jun wasn't dead. And when he opened his eyes 3 days later and saw the woman who had become his wife while he lay unconscious, he didn't demand an annulment. He didn't send her away. Instead, he looked at her with those piercing dark eyes and said 5 words that changed everything. "Stay. I'll protect you now." Before we dive deeper into Zora and Seo-jun's story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss a single moment of this drama. Trust me, you're going to want to see how this unfolds. Now, let's get into it. Atlanta, Georgia, 3 days earlier. The Raines family mansion sat on 12 acres of pristine Georgia land, a sprawling estate that whispered of old money and new schemes. Inside, the family gathered in the formal living room, tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Zora Imani Washington stood at the edge of the room, her dark skin glowing against the cream-colored walls, her natural coils pulled back into a protective style that her stepmother had already criticized twice that morning. She was a stranger in this house, even though she had lived here for 5 years. She was the daughter Marcus Raines never wanted to acknowledge, the product of an affair with a woman he had loved and abandoned. When her mother died of cancer 2 years ago, Zora had nowhere else to go. The Raines family had taken her in, but taken in was a generous description for what they had actually done. She was their maid, their punching bag, their convenient scapegoat. "Zora, come here," Claudette Raines commanded, her voice sharp as broken glass. She was a beautiful woman in the way that venomous snakes were beautiful, sleek, dangerous, and always ready to strike. Zora approached slowly, her worn sneakers silent against the marble floors. She had learned to move quietly in this house. Quiet meant invisible. Invisible meant safe. "Yes, ma'am." Claudette exchanged a look with her husband Marcus, whose face was the color of ash. Whatever they were about to say, it wasn't good. "We have a situation," Marcus said, his voice rough. "A business situation that requires creative solutions." Zora remained silent. She had learned that responding to their vague statements only gave them ammunition. "Your sister," Claudette continued, emphasizing the word with deliberate malice, was supposed to be married today. To Kang Seo-jun, the head of the Kang family. Zora's blood ran cold. Everyone in Atlanta knew the Kang family. They were the most powerful Korean family on the East Coast, their legitimate businesses serving as a gleaming facade for something much darker underneath. Kang Industries owned casinos, luxury hotels, shipping companies, and, according to whispered rumors, controlled most of the underground operations from Atlanta to New York. The head of the family was Kang Seo-jun, a man so private and so dangerous that most people only knew him by reputation. He was 32 years old, ruthlessly intelligent, and had never been photographed by the press. Yvonne was supposed to marry him? Zora asked carefully. Yvonne Raines was Claudette's biological daughter, the golden child, the princess, the one who got everything Zora was denied. She was lighter-skinned, conventionally beautiful, and cruel in ways that left no visible marks. "Was supposed to," Marcus repeated bitterly. But last night, Kang Seo-jun was attacked. He's dead, Zora. Or close to it. The doctors say he won't wake up." Zora felt a chill run down her spine. "I'm sorry to hear that, but I don't understand what this has to do with me." Claudette smiled, and that smile was the most terrifying thing Zora had seen in years. The marriage contract was already signed. The Kang family is demanding that a bride be delivered today as promised. If a Raines woman doesn't show up at that altar, our family will owe them $40 million in breach of contract. We'll lose everything. Then Yvonne should. Yvonne refuses. Claudette's smile sharpened. She says she won't marry a dead man. She has her dignity to consider. Her dignity, Zora repeated flatly. But you. Claudette stepped closer, her expensive perfume overwhelming. You have no dignity to protect, do you? You're nobody. You're nothing. You're the perfect substitute. The words landed like physical blows, but Zora had developed armor over the years. She kept her face blank. You want me to marry a dead man? Technically, a dying man. But yes. Marcus wouldn't meet her eyes. The Kong family won't know the difference. You'll wear the dress. You'll say the vows. And then you'll attend the funeral as his widow. It's a formality. And if I refuse? Claudette's hand shot out and grabbed Zora's wrist, her manicured nails digging in hard enough to leave crescents in the skin. If you refuse, I will personally make sure you end up on the street with nothing. I'll tell everyone the truth about how your mother was nothing but a home-wrecking servant who manipulated Marcus. I'll destroy every chance you have at a future. You'll spend the rest of your life in poverty, just like she did. Zora's jaw tightened. Her mother had been a good woman. A proud woman. A woman who had worked herself to death trying to give Zora a better life. To hear her memory spat upon. But what choice did she have? Fine, Zora whispered. I'll do it. Claudette released her wrist. I knew you'd see reason. Now go get cleaned up. The car leaves in an hour. The Kang estate was everything Zora had expected and nothing she was prepared for. It sprawled across 50 acres in Buckhead, Atlanta's wealthiest neighborhood, a massive compound that blended modern architecture with traditional Korean design elements. Security was everywhere, men in black suits with earpieces, their eyes scanning constantly for threats. Zora arrived in a white dress that didn't fit. It had been made for Yvonne's slimmer frame and gaped awkwardly at the waist. Her hair had been hastily styled, her makeup done by someone who clearly didn't understand how to work with her deep brown skin tone. She looked like a costume, a prop, a placeholder. Which, she supposed, was exactly what she was. Mrs. Raines. A man appeared at the car door, his expression unreadable. He was Korean, tall and broad-shouldered, with a scar running down the side of his neck. I'm Jaewon. I'll be escorting you inside. It's Ms. Washington, Zora corrected quietly. I haven't taken the Raines' name. Something flickered in Jaewon's eyes, surprise, perhaps, or curiosity. But he simply nodded and led her inside. The interior of the mansion was stunning. Dark wood, clean lines, expensive art on every wall. But it was also somber, draped in white fabric and filled with the scent of lilies and incense. Mourning colors. Funeral preparations. The ceremony will take place in the main hall, Jaewon explained as they walked. Mr. Kang is present. Per tradition, the marriage will be completed before his passing is officially acknowledged. You mean before he dies? Jaewon's jaw tightened. Mr. Kang is a fighter. He may yet surprise us all. They reached a set of double doors, and Jaewon pushed them open to reveal the hall beyond. It was beautiful and terrible in equal measure. White flowers everywhere, candles flickering in elaborate arrangements. And at the front of the room, on a raised platform, a coffin, open, with a man lying inside. Zora's feet stopped moving. She couldn't breathe. She had agreed to this, had known what she was walking into, but the reality of it was overwhelming. She was about to marry a man lying in his own coffin. Ms. Washington? Jaewon's voice was gentle. Are you all right? No, she admitted. But I don't suppose that matters. She forced her feet forward. The room was filled with people, Kong family members, business associates, staff. And all of them were staring at her with varying degrees of hostility, curiosity, or outright contempt. A woman stepped forward from the crowd, her silver-streaked hair pulled into an elegant bun. She was older, perhaps in her 60s, with the kind of face that spoke of power and suffering in equal measure. Her eyes swept over Zora with cold assessment. So, this is the substitute. Grandmother Kong, Jaewon murmured. May I present? I know what she is. The old woman, Grandmother Kang, circled Zora slowly, examining her like livestock at auction. The Raines family sends us this? A girl in an ill-fitting dress with country manners. Zora's spine straightened. She might be powerless here, but she would not be broken. I apologize if I'm not what you expected, ma'am. but I'm what you got. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Grandmother Kang's eyes narrowed. Bold. I'll give you that. She turned to address the room. The ceremony will proceed. Whether or not this girl deserves to wear the Kang ring is irrelevant. The contract must be honored. Zora was led to the front of the room, to the edge of the coffin, and for the first time, she looked down at the man who would become her husband. Her breath caught. He was beautiful. There was no other word for it. Even in death or near death, Kang Seo-joon was stunning. His black hair was styled away from his face, revealing sharp features that could have been carved from marble. His lips were slightly parted, his skin pale but flawless. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than everything Zora owned combined. He looked like a fallen prince, a dark angel, something mythical and untouchable. And she was about to promise herself to him. The officiant began speaking, words in Korean that Zora didn't understand, followed by English translations that she barely heard. Her heart was pounding so loud she was surprised no one else could hear it. Do you, Zora Imani Washington, take Kang Seo-joon as your lawful wedded husband? She looked at the man in the coffin. At his closed eyes. At his still chest. I do. Place the ring on his finger. Someone handed her a ring, heavy, platinum, engraved with intricate patterns she couldn't decipher. With trembling hands, she reached into the coffin and lifted his left hand. It was cold, but not as cold as she expected. She slid the ring onto his finger. By the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife. There was no kiss. No celebration. Just a heavy silence that settled over the room like a shroud. Zora was now Mrs. Kang, wife to a man who might never wake up. The next 3 days were a special kind of torture. As the new wife, the widow-to-be, Zora was expected to maintain a vigil at Seo-joon's bedside. He had been moved from the coffin to a hospital bed in a private wing of the mansion, hooked up to machines that beeped and hummed with mechanical indifference. The doctors came and went, their faces grave. His vital signs are stable, they would say, but he shows no signs of consciousness. The trauma to his system was severe. We don't know when or if he'll wake up. The Kang family blamed Zora. Not for the attack, of course. That had happened before she even arrived. But they blamed her for being there, for being the substitute, for not being Yvonne Raines with her lighter skin and her family connections and her properly fitted dress. She's an embarrassment, Zora overheard a woman saying on the second night. And nobody from nowhere. What will people think when they learn the great Kang Seo-joon married some poor country girl? It doesn't matter, another voice replied. He'll be dead within the week. We'll annul the marriage, pay off the Raines family, and pretend this never happened. Zora pressed her back against the wall, out of sight, and let the words wash over her. She had expected this. Had known from the moment she put on that dress that she would be hated here. But knowing something and feeling it were two different things. She spent most of her time in Seo-joon's room, sitting in a chair by his bed, watching the rise and fall of his chest. She didn't know him. Had no reason to care about him. But there was something peaceful about being in his presence, about the quiet rhythm of the machines, about the way the moonlight fell across his face at night. I don't know if you can hear me, she whispered on the third night. But I'm sorry. I'm sorry you got stuck with me. I'm sorry you're here instead of outliving your life. Whatever kind of life that was. She studied his features, the elegant arc of his brows, the strong line of his nose, the tiny scar near his left ear that she had only noticed that morning. You must have been something, she continued softly. To have all these people so afraid of losing you. To have built all of this. She gestured at the luxurious room around them. I've never had anything. Not really. My mom tried so hard to give me everything, but there was always too little. Too little money. Too little time. Too little of everything. A tear slipped down her cheek before she could stop it. I hope you wake up. Not for me, I don't think you'd want to find me here when you do, but for you. For whatever unfinished business you have. You seem like the kind of man who has a lot of unfinished business. She wiped her face and settled back in the chair, pulling her knees up to her chest. Sleep found her quickly, as it often did when she was exhausted and overwhelmed. She didn't notice when the machines began to beep differently. She didn't notice when his fingers twitched against the sheets. She didn't notice when Kang Seo-joon opened his eyes for the first time in 3 days and turned his head to look at the woman sleeping beside his bed. "Who are you?" The voice was rough, like gravel wrapped in silk, and it pulled Zora out of sleep with a violent jolt. She scrambled to her feet, her heart slamming against her ribs, and found herself staring into the darkest eyes she had ever seen. Kang Seo-joon was awake. He was propped up against his pillows, his hospital gown rumpled, his black hair disheveled. The machines beside him were beeping frantically, their calm rhythm disrupted by his sudden return to consciousness. And he was looking at her with an intensity that made her want to run and stay in equal measure. Her voice cracked. She swallowed and tried again. "I'm Zora. Zora Washington. I'm your wife." Silence. Then, slowly, something shifted in his expression. Not surprise, exactly. More like careful calculation. "My wife," he repeated. "Yes, there was a contract. With the Rains family. You were supposed to marry Yvonne Rains, but she couldn't come, so they sent me instead. I'm her stepsister. And you married me while I was unconscious." It wasn't a question. His voice was flat, unreadable, and Zora felt her stomach drop. "I'm sorry. I know this isn't what you wanted. If you want to annul the marriage, I understand. I'll sign whatever papers you need. I had no choice. My family would have." "Stop." She stopped. Seo-joon's eyes traveled over her face, her hair, her body in the wrinkled dress she had been wearing for 3 days. She must have looked terrible, sleep-deprived, tear-stained, desperate. "You've been here," he said slowly. "This entire time?" "Yes. Watching over me. I was told to maintain a vigil. As your wife." Something flickered across his features. Surprise? Interest? It was impossible to tell. "And my family? Where are they?" "They come and go. But mostly they've been dealing with business matters. Making arrangements. Arrangements for my funeral." Zora winced. "Yes." To her shock, Seo-joon laughed. It was a dark sound, bitter and sharp, but it was still a laugh. He was alive enough to laugh. "My loyal family," he murmured. "Already dividing up my empire before my body was cold." His eyes returned to her face. "But not you. You stayed. I had nowhere else to go. Honest." He tilted his head, studying her. "I appreciate honesty. It's rare in my world." Before Zora could respond, the door burst open and Jae-won rushed in, followed by a team of doctors. Within seconds, Seo-joon was surrounded, his vitals being checked, questions being fired at him from all directions. Zora stepped back, pressing herself against the wall, making herself small and invisible the way she had learned to do. But even as the doctors examined him, even as Jae-won reported on everything that had happened in the past 3 days, Seo-joon's eyes kept finding their way back to her. And something told her that her life was about to change forever. "Okay, I need y'all to stop everything and hit that like button right now because this story is about to get so much more intense." Seo-joon is awake, and he's already noticed something special about Zora. But the Kang family doesn't know he's conscious yet, and trust me, when they find out, the drama is going to be unreal. Now let's see what happens next. Within hours, the entire Kang household knew that Seo-joon was awake. And the shift in atmosphere was immediate and terrifying. People who had been openly discussing his death were now scrambling to prove their loyalty. Family members who had been absent suddenly appeared, their faces arranged in expressions of concern and relief. The talk of annulment and payoffs vanished like smoke. Because Kang Seo-joon wasn't just awake. He was conscious, coherent, and very clearly still in control. "My nephew." Logan Kang swept into the hospital room with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He was Seo-joon's uncle on his father's side, a portly man with expensive taste and a reputation for failed business ventures. "Thank God you've recovered. We were so worried." "Were you?" Seo-joon's voice was mild, but there was an edge beneath it. "I heard you were already negotiating for control of my shipping operations." Logan's smile froze. That's a misunderstanding. I was simply trying to ensure continuity. For the family." "Of course you were." Seo-joon's attention shifted to Zora, who was trying to slip out of the room unnoticed. Where are you going? She stopped. I thought you'd want privacy. For family matters. You are family now. His voice brooked no argument. Stay. Logan's eyes narrowed as he looked at Zora, really looked at her for the first time. Ah, yes. The substitute bride. We should discuss that situation as well. Now that you're recovered, there's no need to maintain the charade. The Rains family has already agreed to renegotiate. There will be no renegotiation. Seojun's voice cut through the room like a blade. Zora is my wife. The contract is fulfilled. But surely, are you questioning me, uncle? The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Logan took an involuntary step backward. No, nephew. Of course not. I simply thought, given the circumstances. The circumstances are that I was attacked, nearly died, and woke up to find my entire family already picking over my corpse. The only person who stayed by my side was a woman who had no obligation to do so. A woman you all dismissed as nothing. Seojun's eyes blazed. She stays. Anyone who has a problem with that can discuss it with me directly. Silence. Logan bowed stiffly and retreated from the room, his face a mask of barely contained fury. When the door closed behind him, Seojun let out a breath and leaned back against his pillows. For a moment, he looked exhausted, human in a way he hadn't seemed before. You didn't have to do that, Zora said quietly. Do what? Defend me. Claim me. You don't owe me anything. I signed those papers for my own survival, not because I expected anything from you. Seojun turned his head to look at her, and something in his expression softened almost imperceptibly. Tell me about your family. The real story, not the version they gave my people. Zora hesitated. But something in his gaze made her want to be honest, the same honesty he had said he appreciated. My mother was Marcus Raines's mistress. He promised her the world, then abandoned her when she got pregnant with me. She raised me alone, worked herself to death to put food on the table and keep me in school. When she died 2 years ago, I had nowhere to go. The Raines family took me in, but I've been little more than a servant ever since. They forced you to marry a dying man to save themselves from debt. Yes. And if you had refused, they would have thrown me out, destroyed my reputation, made sure I could never build a life anywhere. Seojun was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, I was attacked by people I trusted. People who wanted what I have: power, money, control. They thought they had succeeded. They thought I would die in that hospital bed and they would finally be free to tear apart everything I built. He reached out and took her hand. His grip was still weak, but his eyes were fierce. I know what it's like to be surrounded by people who only want you for what you can give them. I know what it's like to be alone, even in a crowded room. And I know what it's like to fight for survival with everything you have. Zora's breath caught. You stayed, he continued. When everyone else left, you stayed. That means something to me. I didn't know you. I still don't. Then stay and learn. His thumb brushed over her knuckles. Stay, and let me show you that not everyone in this world wants to use you. Stay, and let me take care of you for once. It was too much. Too fast. Too overwhelming. But when Zora looked into his eyes, she saw something she hadn't seen in years. Hope. Okay, she whispered. I'll stay. The news of Seojun's recovery spread quickly, and with it came new problems. First was the matter of how he had been attacked in the first place. J1 reported that the investigation was ongoing, but early findings suggested an inside job. Someone with access to Seojun's schedule, his security protocols, his vulnerabilities. We have a traitor, J1 said grimly during a private meeting in Seojun's room. Possibly more than one. Seojun's jaw tightened. Names? We're narrowing it down. But the list is extensive. Of course it is. Seojun's gaze flickered to Zora, who was sitting quietly in the corner, trying to make herself invisible. And my new wife? Has anyone threatened her yet? Not directly. But there has been talk. What kind of talk? J1 hesitated. Some family members believe the marriage should be dissolved. They're concerned about her background. Her background. Yes, sir. They feel that a woman of her position is exactly where she belongs. Seojun's voice hardened. Let me make something clear, J1. Zora is my wife. She has every right that comes with that title, including access to my accounts, my properties, and my protection. Anyone who questions that questions me. And we both know what happens to people who question me. Jae-won bowed. Understood, sir. After he left, Seo-jun turned to Zora. You're being very quiet. I'm processing. Processing what? The fact that you just gave me access to billions of dollars and an army of bodyguards. She shook her head. This morning I was wondering if I'd have enough money to buy a bus ticket out of town. Now I'm apparently a mafia princess. A ghost of a smile crossed Seo-jun's face. You're taking this remarkably well. I've learned to adapt. It's a survival skill. Then you'll fit right in here. He sat up straighter, wincing slightly as he moved. But I need to warn you. My family is not going to accept this easily. They're going to test you. Challenge you. Try to break you. I've been tested my whole life. Not like this. His eyes were serious. These people don't just want to hurt your feelings, Zora. They want to destroy you. They want you gone so they can put someone more useful in your place, someone they can control. Then I'll make myself useful in ways they can't control. Something shifted in Seo-jun's expression. Respect, maybe. Or admiration. You're more than they said you were, he murmured. Much more. The attacks began subtly. First, it was the clothing. Zora's worn dresses and second-hand jeans mysteriously disappeared from her room, replaced with funeral attire, shapeless black dresses designed to make her look as dull as possible. I thought Mrs. Kang would need appropriate clothing for the mourning period, one of the staff members said when Zora asked. Given her background, I assumed she wouldn't have anything suitable. Zora said nothing. She wore the black dresses without complaint. Then it was the food. Her meals were consistently late, cold, or missing entirely. When she went to the kitchen to make her own, she found herself blocked by household staff who claimed they were too busy to let her access the facilities. The kitchen is for staff only, one woman said smugly. Mrs. Kang should learn to wait for service like everyone else. Zora's stomach growled, but she said nothing. She found snacks in the pantry when no one was looking and made them last. But the worst was Grandmother Kang. The matriarch of the family had made her disapproval clear from the beginning, but now that Seo-jun was awake and had publicly claimed Zora as his wife, her hostility had turned focused and vicious. You, she said one afternoon, finding Zora in the garden. Come with me. Zora followed, knowing that refusing would only make things worse. Grandmother Kang led her to a small room off the main hall, an empty chamber with bare walls and a cold stone floor. Several other family members were already there, their faces arranged in expressions of righteous judgment. You have shamed this family, Grandmother Kang declared. Parading around as if you belong here. Wearing the Kang ring as if you earned it. My husband gave me this ring, Zora said quietly. He placed it on my finger himself. While he was unconscious. It means nothing. And yet he confirmed the marriage when he woke. He chose to keep me. Grandmother Kang's face flushed with anger. You dare speak back to me? I am the matriarch of this family. I will decide who is worthy of the Kang name. She advanced on Zora, her hand raised as if to strike. But before the blow could land, the door burst open and Seo-jun appeared in the doorway. He was pale, clearly still recovering, but his presence filled the room like a thunderstorm. Jae-won stood behind him, along with several armed guards. Grandmother. His voice was ice. What exactly is happening here? Grandmother Kang lowered her hand slowly. We were simply discussing family matters. Nothing for you to concern yourself with. My wife is my concern. Seo-jun crossed the room and took Zora's hand, pulling her gently to his side. And I will not tolerate her being treated like a criminal. She doesn't belong here. She belongs wherever I say she belongs. Seo-jun's eyes swept over the gathered family members. Let me make something very clear. I died. For 3 days, I was gone from this world. And in that time, I saw exactly who my family really is. The vultures who circled my corpse. The jackals who fought over my empire before my body was cold. His grip on Zora's hand tightened. But this woman, this stranger who owed me nothing, stayed by my side. She didn't scheme. She didn't plot. She sat in that chair for 3 days and prayed for a man she had never met. Silence. I don't know if I believe in fate, Seo Jun continued. But I know what loyalty looks like. And I will protect it with everything I have. He turned and led Zora from the room, leaving the stunned family members behind. 2 weeks passed. Seo Jun's health improved steadily, and with it, his grip on his empire. Investigations continued into who had ordered the attack, and the list of suspects grew shorter every day. Zora found herself settling into an unexpected routine. Mornings with Seo Jun, discussing everything from business to books to their favorite foods. Afternoons exploring the estate, often with Jae-won as her reluctant guide. Evenings in the library, curled up with a book while Seo Jun worked nearby. It was peaceful. It was strange. It was almost like having a home. But peace, Zora had learned, never lasted. The call came on a Tuesday morning. The Rains family is here, Jae-won announced, his face grim. All of them. They're demanding to see Mrs. Kang. Zora's heart stuttered. What do they want? They claim you stole jewelry from them before you left. They want it returned, along with compensation for their emotional distress. That's insane. I didn't steal anything. I know. Jae-won's expression softened slightly. Mr. Kang knows. But they're making a scene in the front lobby, and the press has been alerted. Of course they had been. The Rains family was nothing if not theatrical. Zora straightened her shoulders. Take me to them. She found the Rains family in the grand foyer, looking wildly out of place among the elegant decor. Marcus was red-faced and blustering. Claudette was wearing her most expensive dress and an expression of aggrieved victimhood. Yvonne stood behind them, her arms crossed, a smug smile on her face. And behind them, a camera crew was setting up. There she is. Claudette pointed dramatically at Zora. The thief. The liar. She stole our family heirlooms and used our good name to worm her way into this family. I stole nothing, Zora said, her voice calm despite her racing heart. You gave me nothing to steal. She's lying. She took my grandmother's necklace. It's worth thousands of dollars. I've never seen your grandmother's necklace in my life. The camera crew was filming everything now. Zora could feel the eyes on her, could hear the whispered judgments from the gathered Kang family members who had wandered in to watch the spectacle. Search her room, Marcus demanded. You'll find the evidence. There's nothing to find, because I didn't take anything. Then you won't mind if we look. Before Zora could respond, Yvonne stepped forward with a sly smile. Actually, I already found it. She held up a velvet pouch. One of the maids discovered this hidden in Zora's closet this morning. The necklace, several rings, and almost $5,000 in cash. Gasps rippled through the room. That's not mine, Zora said, but her voice wavered now. Because she recognized the setup. Recognized the trap closing around her. It was in your room. In your closet. With your fingerprints all over it. I've never touched those things. The evidence says otherwise. Yvonne's smile widened. Face it, Zora. You're nothing but a common thief. And now everyone knows it. Zora felt the walls closing in. Felt her fragile new life crumbling around her. She had been stupid to think she could escape her past. Stupid to think she could ever be anything more than the unwanted daughter, the burden, the scapegoat. But then, that's quite enough. The voice cut through the chaos like a blade through silk. Seo Jun walked into the foyer, flanked by Jae-won and two of his most intimidating guards. He was dressed impeccably in a black suit, his face unreadable, his eyes fixed on the Rains family with an expression that made Claudette take an involuntary step backward. Mr. Kang, Marcus began, we were just. I know what you were doing. Seo Jun's voice was soft, but it carried through the room like thunder. You were trying to destroy my wife's reputation. To plant evidence and frame her for a crime she didn't commit. In my house. In front of cameras. He looked at the camera crew and raised an eyebrow. I assume you're being paid well for this. But let me offer you some advice. Whatever the Rains family is paying you, it's not worth the legal consequences of what you're currently filming. The camera crew exchanged nervous glances. You see, Seo Jun continued, my security team has been monitoring your family since you arrived. We have footage of Yvonne Rains entering my wife's room this morning and planting the velvet pouch. We have audio of Claudette Rains coordinating with the camera crew last night. We have financial records showing the payment you made to them. The color drained from the Rain's faces. You came into my house and tried to frame my wife. Seo Jun's voice hardened. That was a mistake. He nodded to Jae-won. Escort the camera crew out. Confiscate their footage. As for the Rain's family, they are no longer welcome on my property. Ever. If they set foot on any Kong-owned land again, they will be arrested for trespassing. Marcus sputtered. You can't do this. I just did. Seo Jun moved to Zora's side and took her hand. And if you ever come near my wife again, I will bury you. Not physically, I'm far too civilized for that. But financially? Socially? Legally? I will destroy everything you have and make sure the world knows exactly what kind of people you are. He turned to the gathered Kong family members. Anyone who has a problem with my wife should remember this moment. Remember what I do to people who try to harm her. And ask yourselves if it's really worth making an enemy of me. Silence. Then, slowly, the crowd began to disperse. The camera crew was led away. The Rain's family was escorted out, their protests echoing off the walls until the doors closed behind them. And Zora found herself alone with Seo Jun, his hand still holding hers, his eyes searching her face. Are you all right? She didn't know what to say. Didn't know how to process what had just happened. You defended me. Again. I told you. I protect what's mine. But I'm not really yours. This marriage was forced on both of us. Seo Jun was quiet for a moment. Then he reached up and gently touched her face, his thumb brushing away a tear she hadn't realized she'd shed. When I woke up, he said softly, the first thing I saw was your face. You were sleeping in that chair, tears dried on your cheeks, and you were the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. Not because of how you looked, but because you were there. Because you stayed when everyone else left. His eyes met hers. Maybe this marriage was forced. Maybe neither of us chose this path. But I'm choosing now. I'm choosing you, Zora. If you'll let me. Her heart was pounding so hard she could barely breathe. This is crazy, she whispered. We barely know each other. Then let's get to know each other. A hint of a smile crossed his face. I have time. And apparently, so do you. She laughed, a shaky, teary sound, and leaned into his touch. Okay, she said. Let's try. Over the next month, Zora began to truly understand the world she had married into. The Kang family was vast, dozens of cousins, uncles, aunts, and extended relatives, all with their own agendas and ambitions. Seo Jun was the head of the family at 32, having inherited the position when his father died 5 years earlier. He controlled the legitimate businesses, Kong Industries, with its casinos, hotels, and shipping companies, as well as the less legitimate operations that everyone knew about but no one discussed openly. He was brilliant, ruthless, and surprisingly gentle when they were alone. Tell me about your mother, he said one evening as they sat in the garden, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and pink. Zora smiled at the memory. She was a warrior. She worked 2, sometimes 3 jobs to keep us going. She never complained. Never let me see her cry, even when things were at their worst. She sounds strong. She was the strongest person I ever knew. Zora's voice softened. She used to say that our circumstances don't define us, our choices do. That we can always choose to be better, even when the world is trying to tear us down. Seo Jun was quiet for a moment. I wish I could have met her. She would have been terrified of you. Most people are. Not me. He turned to look at her, his dark eyes warm in the fading light. No, not you. Their relationship deepened slowly, built on late-night conversations and shared meals, and the quiet intimacy of learning another person's secrets. Seo Jun told her about his father, a hard man who had valued power above all else, and his mother, who had died when he was young. He told her about the burden of leadership, the loneliness of being surrounded by people who only wanted to use him. And Zora told him about her childhood, about her mother's love, about the years of mistreatment at the hands of the Rains family. She told him about the dreams she had given up on college, a career, a life of her own. Why did you give them up? He asked. Because survival came first. You can't chase dreams when you're fighting to keep a roof over your head. And now? She looked at him, at this powerful man who had somehow become her ally, her protector, her friend. Now I don't know. Everything is different. I'm different. He took her hand. Whatever you want, Zora. Whatever dreams you had, whatever goals you abandoned, I'll help you achieve them. All of them. Why? Because I can. Because you deserve it. Because. He hesitated, then finished quietly, because making you happy has become important to me. Her heart swelled. But before she could respond, Jae-won appeared in the garden doorway, his face grave. Mr. Kong. We've identified the people behind the attack. The warmth vanished from Seo-jun's face, replaced by cold calculation. Who? Your cousin Logan. And your half-brother Jacob. The names landed like physical blows. Seo-jun's jaw tightened, and Zora saw his hands clench into fists. My own blood, he said softly. Of course. They've been working together for months, planning to eliminate you and divide the family assets between them. They hired the attackers. They made sure your security was compromised. And grandmother? Jae-won hesitated. She wasn't directly involved. But she knew. She knew and said nothing. Seo-jun closed his eyes for a long moment. When he opened them again, his expression was carved from stone. Bring them to me. All of them. The confrontation took place in the main hall of the Kang mansion. Logan and Jacob had been invited to a family meeting, an invitation delivered by armed guards who made it clear that refusal was not an option. Grandmother Kang came voluntarily, her face pale but her spine straight. Seo-jun sat at the head of the long table, Zora beside him. The rest of the family had been summoned as witnesses, filling the room with tense silence and barely concealed fear. Cousin, Logan began, his voice too jovial. I don't know what lies you've been told, but don't. Seo-jun's voice was ice. I have the financial records, the communications, the testimony of the men you hired, men who were very cooperative once they realized they could either talk or spend the rest of their lives in prison. Logan's smile faltered. You tried to kill me, Seo-jun continued. You thought that if I was out of the way, you could finally have what you've always wanted. The money, the power, the control. Jacob spoke up, his voice bitter. It should have been mine anyway. You were always father's favorite, even though you weren't even his legitimate son. Why should you have everything while I got nothing? Because I earned it. Seo-jun leaned forward. Because while you were partying and spending money you didn't make, I was building this empire. I was making the hard decisions. I was carrying the weight that you never wanted to bear. You were born lucky. I was born into a world that wanted to devour me, and I survived. That's not luck, Jacob. That's will. He turned to Grandmother Kong. And you, Grandmother. You knew. You knew they were planning to murder me, and you said nothing. For the first time, Grandmother Kang looked her age old and tired and beaten. I thought perhaps it would be for the best. You were always so much like your father. Cold. Ruthless. I thought perhaps someone with more warmth might be better for the family. Someone you could control, you mean? She had no answer for that. Seo-jun stood, his presence commanding every eye in the room. Here is what is going to happen. Logan and Jacob, you are stripped of all family privileges. Your assets are frozen. You will be given enough to live comfortably. I'm not cruel, but you will have no access to Kong Industries, no voice in family matters, and no claim to any inheritance. Logan made a sound of protest, but Seo-jun silenced him with a look. You should be grateful I'm not having you arrested. The only reason I'm not is because this family doesn't need the scandal. But make no mistake, if either of you ever comes near me or my wife again, I will not be so merciful. He turned to Grandmother Kong. As for you, Grandmother, you will retire from family affairs. Completely. You may remain in the estate if you wish, but your days of meddling are over. You would do this to your own grandmother? You would have let them kill me. Seo-jun's voice was quiet, but devastating. You made your choice. Now live with it. He reached for Zora's hand and pulled her to her feet. The Kong family has a new future now. One where loyalty is rewarded and betrayal is punished. One where my wife stands beside me as an equal partner, not a substitute or a placeholder. He looked at her, and for a moment, the hardness faded from his eyes, replaced by something warm and fierce. Mrs. Kang is the head of this family, alongside me. Anyone who disrespects her disrespects me. And we all know how I handle disrespect. He led her from the room, leaving the stunned family behind. After the confrontation, things changed. The family members who had once looked at Zora with contempt now treated her with wary respect. The staff who had ignored her requests now scrambled to fulfill them. The whispers about the substitute bride faded into silence. She was Mrs. Kang now. Really and truly. But more important than the respect, more important than the power, was the relationship she had built with Seo Jun. It had started as a forced arrangement, a convenience for both of them. But somewhere along the way, it had become something real. Something precious. "I want to take you somewhere," Seo Jun said one morning, finding her in the library with a cup of tea and a worn paperback. "Where?" "You'll see." He drove them himself, no guards, no entourage, through the streets of Atlanta and into the countryside beyond. They ended up at a small cemetery on a hillside, surrounded by ancient oaks and wildflowers. "Your mother," he said quietly. "You said you never got to give her a proper memorial." Zora's heart clenched. "How did you?" "I had J1 find out where she was buried. The plot was unmarked. The Rains family never bothered with a headstone. So I arranged for one." He led her to a plot near the edge of the cemetery. A beautiful marble headstone had been placed there, engraved with her mother's name, her dates, and a simple inscription. "Beloved mother. Warrior. Hero." Zora fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't know what she looked like," Seo Jun said, kneeling beside her. "So I had them engrave a lily. You mentioned once that they were her favorite flower." "How?" She couldn't speak. Couldn't find words for the emotion overwhelming her. "You gave me something precious," Seo Jun said quietly. "Your loyalty. Your trust. Your presence when I was at my lowest. I wanted to give you something back." She threw her arms around him, sobbing into his shoulder, and he held her without saying a word. They stayed at the cemetery for hours. Zora told her mother about her new life, about Seo Jun, about the family, about everything that had happened. She introduced him, awkwardly and tearfully, and promised to visit again soon. As they drove home, Seo Jun reached over and took her hand. "I have something else for you." "Seo Jun, you've already. Just let me spoil you. I'm good at it." She laughed, still shaky from emotion. "Fine. What is it?" He handed her a folder. Inside was an acceptance letter to Emory University, one of the best schools in the South. "You said you wanted to go to college, that you had to give up that dream. I pulled some strings." "Some strings?" "Seo Jun, this is you getting what you deserve." He glanced at her, his eyes soft. "You're brilliant, Zora. You've survived things that would have broken most people. You deserve the chance to chase your dreams, and I'm going to make sure you get it." She stared at the letter, at her name printed clearly at the top, at the future that was suddenly opening before her. "Thank you," she whispered. "For everything." "You don't have to thank me." He squeezed her hand. "Just promise me you won't leave." "Leave?" "When you realize you could have anyone, any life, any future, promise me you'll stay. Promise me you won't disappear." She turned to look at him, this powerful, dangerous, unexpectedly tender man who had somehow become her home. "I promise," she said. "I'm not going anywhere." 3 months after Seo Jun woke up, they attended their first public event together. It was a charity gala at one of the Kang hotels, filled with Atlanta's elite. Zora wore a custom gown, deep emerald green that complemented her dark skin, designed specifically for her by a designer Seo Jun had flown in from Milan. She looked stunning. She knew she looked stunning. And from the way Seo Jun's eyes had darkened when he first saw her, he knew it too. "Ready?" he asked, offering his arm at the entrance. "No." She took his arm anyway. "But when has that ever stopped me?" They walked in together, and the room fell silent. Zora felt every eye on her as they moved through the crowd. She heard the whispers, some admiring, some incredulous, some hostile. She saw the shocked recognition on faces of people who had heard of the substitute bride, but never expected her to be so poised, so beautiful, so clearly comfortable on Seo Jun's arm. She felt like a queen. You're doing wonderfully, Seo Jun murmured as they accepted champagne from a passing server. They're all terrified of you. Good. He laughed, a real laugh, warm and genuine, and several nearby guests looked startled. Apparently, Kang Seo Jun didn't laugh often. The evening was a triumph. Zora charmed donors, deflected intrusive questions with grace, and held her own in conversations about business, politics, and philanthropy. By the end of the night, she had more business cards than she knew what to do with and several tentative friendship offers from other wives. But the moment she would remember forever came on the balcony. Seo Jun had led her outside, away from the crowd, to a private terrace overlooking the Atlanta skyline. The city glittered below them, a sea of lights against the darkness. You were amazing in there, he said. I had a good partner. Zora. He turned to face her, his expression more serious than she had ever seen. There's something I need to tell you. Her heart stuttered. What is it? When we first met, I thought I knew what this would be. A business arrangement. A marriage of convenience. Something practical and emotionless. And now? Now! He stepped closer, his hands coming up to frame her face. Now I can't imagine my life without you. You've changed everything, Zora. The way I see the world. The way I see myself. The way I think about the future. Her breath caught. I know this started strangely. I know I'm not the kind of man you probably dreamed about. But if you'll let me, I want to spend the rest of my life making you happy. I want to be the husband you deserve, not just the one you were forced to marry. Seo Jun. I love you. The words came out raw and honest, stripped of all pretense. I love your strength and your kindness and your sharp tongue and your stubborn heart. I love the way you laugh at my jokes even when they're not funny. I love the way you look at me like I'm worth something beyond my money and my power. I love you, Zora. And I think I have since the moment I opened my eyes and saw your face. She was crying now, tears streaming down her face, ruining her carefully applied makeup. You ridiculous man, she whispered. I love you too. His smile broke across his face like the sun emerging from clouds. Yeah. He kissed her then, on the balcony overlooking Atlanta, under a sky full of stars. And for the first time in her life, Zora Imani Washington, now Zora Kang, felt like she had finally come home. The Kang family had changed. Logan and Jacob had disappeared into comfortable obscurity, their schemes forgotten. Grandmother Kang had retired to a private wing of the estate, rarely emerging except for family dinners. The remaining family members had learned to respect, even admire, the woman who had started as a substitute and become the heart of the family. Zora had completed her first year of college with a perfect GPA. She was studying business management, learning the skills that would one day help her support Seo Jun in running the family empire. She had made friends, built a life, found a purpose beyond mere survival. And through it all, Seo Jun had been beside her. He had made good on every promise. He spoiled her relentlessly with gifts, with attention, with unconditional support for every dream she had ever abandoned. He listened to her stories about her mother and told her his own stories in return. He introduced her to his world and welcomed her into every corner of it. They were partners now, equals, in everything. On their first anniversary, Seo Jun took her back to the cemetery to visit her mother's grave. They brought lilies and sat together on the grass, and Zora told her mother about everything that had happened over the past year. I'm happy, Mama, she whispered. Finally, truly happy. Seo Jun put his arm around her and pulled her close. Your mother would be proud of you, he said quietly. I know I am. Zora leaned into him, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat, the warmth of his body against hers. Thank you, she said, for seeing me. When everyone else looked right through me, you saw me. I will always see you. He kissed her forehead. Always. They sat there until the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. And when they finally stood to leave, Zora took one last look at her mother's grave. I made it, Mama, she thought. I found my place. I found my home. And holding her husband's hand, Zora Kang walked toward her future, a future filled with love, purpose, and endless possibility. Y'all, if this story didn't have you in your feelings, I don't know what will. Zora's journey from unwanted stepdaughter to powerful mafia wife is literally everything. Make sure you subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming stories. We've got more Afro-Korean drama, more forbidden romance, and more strong women claiming their power coming your way. Drop a comment below telling me your favorite part of the story. Was it the wedding to the coffin, Seo Jun defending Zora against her family, or that confession on the balcony? I want to hear from you. And if you haven't already, check out our other videos for more stories just like this one. Until next time, stay blessed and stay tuned. See you in the next one.